Let's get to a developing story this morning. A large Chinese rocket is plummeting back to Earth right now. It's expected to crash land on Earth in a few hours, maybe tonight.
Yeah, the big question everyone's wondering, where will this thing land? The Pentagon says an exact location isn't going to be able to be pinpointed until within hours of its re-entry. So joining us now to give us a better idea about what exactly is going on up there in space is the Director of Mission Operations over at the UC Berkeley Space Sciences Lab, Abhi Tripathi. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of articles that I'm seeing are kind of calling this an out-of-control rocket. Is that fair to say?
It is actually a fair description. So let me back up and provide you a little bit of context. So this particular rocket was launched on April 29th out of China. It actually contained as its payload part of the new Chinese space station. So China is attempting to put up a space station much like the ones that the Americans, Europeans, and Russians have in common. So what is odd and concerning about the Chinese space program is that unlike other rocket launchers, especially in the US, Russia, Europe, etc., they purposely decide to not put in the time and engineering effort into controlling their first stage reentry. So what that means is a rocket goes up, and it's usually in two stages. The first stage is what typically falls back down to Earth, and the second stage is what takes your payload into orbit, whether it's a space station, a spacecraft, whatever. Most rocket manufacturers, well, all rocket manufacturers outside of China, engineer into their rocket the ability to control the descent and crash it into the ocean or crash it somewhere where they want to on purpose. China forego that capability, and they said, you know what, we don't have the time and the energy to make that effort. We want to go fast, so we're going to design a rocket such that it randomly comes down wherever it comes down.
I've read that China's space program has been called irresponsible. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I would. This particular launch came out of an island off the coast of China. So at least that's slightly more responsible in the sense that the comparison is before they launched many of their rockets from an inland launch site in the Sichuan province. And this one was very concerning because there the first stage would randomly land over somewhere over Chinese farms or villages. I think some people have estimated in the U.S. intelligence community have estimated that perhaps up to 100 Chinese citizens have died over the years. That's not official, of course, because official numbers are never released. Yeah. But there, the rocket parts, rain down on farms and villages. So, they've definitely made a conscious decision to prioritize speed and growth of their space program over safety measures that in the U.S. we take for granted.
Yeah.
So basically you're saying this has happened kind of before, but it's always kind of fallen over in China. And now this one, we're not really necessarily sure exactly where it might land.
Exactly. This same rocket, actually, the same line of rocket launched a few weeks or months ago. And it also, of course, came down uncontrolled. And it luckily mostly came down over the Atlantic Ocean with some debris going close to the Ivory Coast. And, we may end up having this conversation again several times because there's potentially up to 11 more launches of this vehicle in the upcoming months and years. Oh, wow. And all of their first stages will have random reentries just like this one.
I've read that this crash landing is expected in Sudan around 8:45 tonight, but give or take 16 hours. Is that right?
It is actually not accurate right now. It could be that's what happens, but here's what I can tell you with a little bit of certainty. First of all, let me not bury the lead any further. If any of your viewers are in California, they can have a sigh of relief. They will not be in the debris field.
Okay, good to know.
What we do know is that it is likely that this rocket will re-enter between around 4 p.m. Pacific time and around 2 a.m. Pacific time tonight. The only parts of the U.S. that are still not cleared is, imagine if you draw a thin pencil line between, West Texas and Maryland or New Jersey, okay? If you're along that thin pencil line, you're not clear yet. Likewise, if you live anywhere from just south of Tampa to just north of Orlando and you draw a thin pencil line across Florida, you're not yet clear. You could be clear later today, but you're not yet clear. And those are the only parts of the U.S. that are still have the potential to be in the debris field.
That's a lot of area and potentially a lot of people involved.
It absolutely is. There are larger parts of Spain, for example, Saudi Arabia, India, and parts of Southeast Asia that also have a higher probability. And of course, it goes without saying what the population density there is. So I should back up by saying that there's a very small chance that this actually hits any populated area. The vast majority of times, something like this ends up in the ocean, just because the Earth is primarily ocean. Right. However, if you live in one of those areas that we just mentioned, you definitely don't have a non-zero possibility of something coming down on you.
And it is possible that this debris burns up before it even enters Earth, correct?
Absolutely. So the rocket we're talking about is about 22 metric tons. It's likely that by the time it gets through the majority of the atmosphere, about half of that, or a little bit more than half of that, will be burned up. But then you still have around 9 to 10 metric tons of stuff that will not burn up, and that's the debris folks are worried about. And so usually the way that manifests itself, and I've witnessed one of these firsthand, is that you see a fireball for on the order of 5 to 10 seconds, and then after that you see a bunch of smoky debris raining down like shrapnel across wherever your ground track is.
Kind of scary.
It really is. Thank you so much for setting us straight and giving some more information on this. And it is a strange phenomenon, and it's the first of many, as you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm happy to explain this further to your viewers.
All right. Thank you so much.
We'll be right back.